Back in 2008, I was a student planning to go to university and needed some extracurricular stuff I could put on my entry applications. As most of UK students know, one of the best to have on there is the Duke of Edinburgh Award. As a part of this award, you have to embark on orientating expedition, basically a long trek through woodland and rural villages, following nothing but a map and a compass. No GPS allowed. It's a teamwork experience and you can camp and overcome hurdles together, etc. Anyways, I was out of shape at the time and so my uncle volunteered to take me out to the middle of nowhere to get some idea of what orientating was like. We didn't stay overnight like I would have to during the real thing, but we hiked maybe 10 miles through woods and a small village in a pretty summer weather. By the end of the journey, we were soaked to the bone and pretty miserable, looking forward to getting back to the car and heading home. For the last part of the journey, we were on our dirt trail heading uphill with bushes and trees either side. We were marching onward in silence. At this point, when all of a sudden there was a rustling in the foliage to our left. From behind a large bush stepped an old man in a black suit with a red tie and dress shoes. He looked late 70s, early 80s, very pale, liver spots dotting in his face, and a gray-white comb over. I was instantly weirded out. Who dresses like that to go into the woods? The instant thought a guy seeing his age out there in those clothes and those weather conditions was, this guy has lost his marbles. There was something else that took me an extra moment to notice, though that puzzled me. The guy was bone dry and didn't even have mud in his shoes. We stopped in our tracks and just stared at the man for a moment, who appeared to be frozen and shocked at seeing us. My uncle made the first move, taking a step towards him, asking him if he was alright. The old man continued to stare for a moment, not even moving a twitch, then became suddenly very animated. It was like he suddenly snapped out of a trance. He started flailing his arms wildly, saying something awful had happened, that a good friend of his needed help. He began walking backwards into the woods, mentioning for us to follow him, which we did. We started off at a brisk walk, then elevated to running as we struggled to keep up with the old man. After maybe about a minute, he disappeared ahead of us, but we could still hear him, so continued to follow the noise until we reached a huge slope. We stopped at the edge and looked down to see the old man standing at the bottom, motioning us, pleading with us to follow him. I remember looking down and the slope was probably at a 40-degree angle, spin for perhaps 50 feet or more, and stick with the mud. It looked like an accident waiting to happen, especially given there were no shrubs or roots to hold onto or anything. I remember looking down at the old man on the other side of the slope and wondering, how the heck did he cross that so quickly and so cleanly? I mean, at that distance it is hard to see fine detail clearly, but I swear he still did not appear to be wet or muddy at all. Me and my uncle looked at each other, and I saw that he was getting as weirded out as I was. Despite my feelings, I made a step towards the edge and was going to try to make my way down, when my uncle grabbed me firmly by the arm and pulled me back. Under his breath, he said to me, "Something is wrong here." We took a few steps back from the edge at this point, and the old man at the bottom started getting irritated. He began pleading with us again to come down to the slope, telling us he needed our help, his friend was in trouble. My uncle shouted down to the old man that he would head back to our car and call the emergency service for him, that professional help would be on its way soon, that they would all have tools to help him, etc. The old man suddenly got furious. He began jumping up and down, demanding that we come down the slope right now or there will be hell to pay. His voice has changed drastically. He was particularly growling his words, his hands punched up into fists, pounding his knees like an angry toddler throwing a tritium. I never seen a grown adult fly into such a rage in my life. His eyes looked like they were in a vortex of busting out of their sockets. His skin gone from pale to red in almost an instant. We began to hurl, make our way back the way we came, his demands and threats getting less audible as we got closer to the trail. Once on the trail, we particularly power marched the remaining quarter mile or so to the car, all while my uncle was on the phone to the emergency services explaining to them that there has been a possible mentally ill old man wandering the trail. We were ordered to get into our car and await the police so we could show them where we had encountered him. About an hour later, we met 4 officers, 2 of whom had dogs with them, and pack of supplies like first aid, emergency blankets, etc. We led them to the exact same spot and then pointed the 2 officers with dogs in the direction he led us through the bushes. The search lasted all weekend, but there was no trace of the old man. Officers said that the only trail they could have picked up had been mine and my uncle's. They didn't find any footprints or anything belonging to the old man we encountered. One time I went to the bar with one of my friends. I had just turned 21, so I haven't been to much bars up to that point. My friend was drinking on the way to the bar, so he was already pretty drunk when we got there. When I sat at the bar, a cute girl came and talked to me and my friend. She said her name was Candace, and I noticed she had really bright hair. I assumed she dyed it. It was pretty, but unnatural. Anyways, this girl was flirting with me and my friend. She could tell my friend was already very drunk. To be honest, I played along like I was already drunk too, since it seemed to be working for my friend. I didn't know if she was just trying to get free drinks, so I told her we didn't have much money. She offered us to buy drinks. She kept buying us drinks and I started to get confused as to who she liked between me and my friend. My friend went to the bathroom. Before he came, he was kicked by the bouncers. He was too drunk. Candace and I went outside with him. She kept telling him to go home with her. He was so out of it that he could barely answer her. I told her that he was too drunk and I couldn't let him go anywhere. I didn't want him to wake up in a hangover in some random house with no car and no idea what happened. Candace kept pushing it, saying that she would take care of him, but I told her no because I had to stay with him. I was more sober than him, that he was my responsibility. I told her that the only way he was going anywhere is if I tagged along. I assumed she thought I was jealous or cock-blocking, but my friend could barely stand and lost interest in Candace already by that point. She immediately started flirting with me and offered to get my friend a taxi to drive him home and said we could go to her place alone. At this point, I had a few drinks and I was already pretty buzzed, so I agreed. We took my friend to the taxi and walked her to the car. I slightly stumbled on the way to her car. "Wow, you're pretty drunk, huh?" she said as smiling as held into my arm. "Yeah," I said. I didn't know why, but I just felt slightly shy and anxious. Everything was just happening too easy for me, so I felt really uneased. We got in her car. We drove down the street. "Wanna stop at the liquor store to get some more to drink? I'll buy it so you don't have to worry about paying," she offered. I didn't want it to drink any more than I already did. I was already buzzed and I wanted to be able to carry myself throughout the rest of the night. Sometimes I make myself look stupid when I'm drunk, so I don't want to ruin anything with Candace more than I already did earlier with telling her my friend was too drunk. I told her that I was already drunk enough, but she insisted. I didn't want to seem lame, so I told her to get me a pint of liquor with some apple juice to taste it. She went in the store and came out with a lot more than just a pint. I assumed she wanted to drink more, and that's why she got a fifth instead of a pint. On the car ride, we passed the bottle back and forth, but she took tiny sips. I tried to take tiny sips, but she kept passing me the bottle and telling me to drink. I somehow managed to drink all my apple juice, and pretended to drink the bottle by spitting the liquor in the apple juice bottle and tossing the apple juice bottle full of liquor out of the window before she saw it. I didn't want her to know I was acting drunker than I was. She actually believed I was sloppy drunk when I was simply buzzed. I took a couple of more sips of the liquor and finished the bottle. Throughout the car ride, I called her the wrong name a couple of times to get a reaction out of her. She didn't react to it. She just kept letting me call her Carla without correcting me. For some reason, I thought she lied to me about her name intentionally. We drove to her house and I pretended to trip and stumble into her front door. She helped me walk inside by holding me up. She opened her front door, which was unlocked. We walked in her house. She closed her front door and then locked it. I thought that was strange, but assumed she didn't want anyone walking on us. I told her that I had to use the bathroom. I walked into her bathroom, locked the door, and looked in the mirror. I felt strange. I felt like something was off. I felt myself becoming more drunk from finishing the bottle earlier. I turned on the sink to make noise and made myself puke the liquor I drank. I flushed it and went to the sink and started drinking the tap water out of my hands to sober up. I just didn't want to be drunk, but I still wanted to hook up with Candace, so I wanted to pretend to be drunk. I turned the sink off and I could hear her talking to someone. He's drunk as hell, he can barely stand up. You do it. Who was she talking to? And do what? I walked out of the bathroom and into the living room. The moment I stepped into the living room, I saw her walking into another room. All I could see was the back of her head, that strange, very bright red hair going to another room. I didn't see her face or anything, I just saw her kind of walk fast into the room. The living room was pretty dark. Hey, where you're going? I slurred like I was drunk. She walked back into the dark living room and up to me. Let's go to my room, she said. I looked at her bright red hair and then into her eyes. They were different. Her face was different. It was another girl with the same hair. That's when I realized. It was another girl with the same wig on. It was a wig the whole time. She had changed it with the other girl from earlier for whatever reason. My heart felt like it stopped, but I tried to look like I had no idea it was a different girl. I kinda smiled at her and told her I just needed to use the bathroom one more time and told her sorry I was so drunk. She said it's fine, just hurry up in there. I went into the bathroom and locked the door. I heard her whisper something to someone again. This time I think I heard a male voice whisper back. I honestly didn't concentrate on listening to exactly what she said. Something sketchy was going on, and I had to get out of that house. I opened the bathroom window and jumped straight out of it and ran faster than I ever run in my life. I didn't look behind myself or anything. I just ran through the backyard, jumped the fence, ran through someone else's backyard, hit a road, and ran towards the main road. I kept running down the main road until I saw a Star CVS. I ran into the CVS and stood straight in front of the store in front of the camera. I called a taxi and went home. I tried to think what happened that night. What was she or they planning that night? Why did she tell me a fake name? Why was she trying to get my friend and I so drunk? I thought maybe a robbery, but she kept spending money on us. She even kept buying us drinks and even paid for my friend's taxi cab. And mostly, why does she wear a wig that she gave to another girl to wear? Who was she talking to? What did it mean? And what was in that room that they tried luring me into? Edit. The next day after this incident, I went back into the house with a couple of friends to see just what was going on. Nobody was there. No cars, no people, nothing. Just an empty house. I ended up finding out that the house was a summer rental, and whoever those people were, they broke into the house and used it only for that night and never came back. About 5 years ago, I lived in downtown in a major city in the US. I've always been a night person, so I would often find myself bored after my roommate, who was decidedly not a night person, went to sleep. To pass the time, I used to go for long walks and spend the time thinking. I spent 4 years like that, walking alone at night, and never once had a reason to feel afraid. I always used to joke around with my roommate that even the drug dealers in the city were polite, but all that changed just a few minutes of one evening. It was a Wednesday, somewhere between 1 or 2 in the morning, and I was walking near a police patrol park, quite a ways from my apartment. It was a quiet night, even for a weeknight, with very little traffic and almost no one on foot. The park, as it was most nights, was completely empty. I turned down a short side street in order to loop back into my apartment when I first noticed him. At the far end of my street on my side was a silhouette of a man dancing. It was a strange dance, similar to a waltz, but he finished each box with an odd forward strut. I guess you can say he was dance walking, headed straight for me. Decidedly, he was probably drunk. I stepped as close as I could to the road to give him the majority of the sidewalk to pass me by. The closer he got, the more I realized how graceful he was moving. He was very tall and lanky and wearing an old suit. He danced closer still, until I could make out his face. His eyes were wide open and wild, head tilted back slightly, looking off at the sky. His mouth was forming a painfully wide cartoon of a smile. Between the eyes and the smile, I decided to cross the street before he danced any closer. I took my eyes off him to cross the empty street. As I reached the other side, I glanced back, and then stopped, dead in my tracks. He then stopped dancing and was standing with one foot on the street, perfectly parallel to me. He was facing me, but still looking skyward, smile still wide on his lips. I was completely and utterly unnerved by this. I started walking again, but kept my eyes on the man. He didn't move. Once I had put about a half a block between us, I turned away from him for a moment to watch the sidewalk in front of me. The street and sidewalk ahead of me were completely empty. Still unnerved, I looked back to where he has been standing to find him gone. For the briefest of moments, I felt relief until I noticed him. He had crossed the street and was now slightly crouched down. I couldn't tell for sure due to the distance and the shadows, but I was certain that he was facing me. I had looked away from him for no more than 10 seconds, so it was clear that he had moved fast. I was so shocked that I stood there for some time, staring at him, and then he started moving towards me again. He took giant, exaggerated tiptoe steps, as if he were a cartoon character sneaking up on someone, except he was moving very, very quickly. I like to say at this point I ran away or pulled my pepper spray or myself or anything at all, but I didn't. I just stood there, completely frozen, as the smiling man crept towards me. And then he stopped again, about a car length away from me, still smiling his smile, still looking to the sky. When I finally found my voice, I blurred the first thing that came into mind. What I meant to ask was, "What the fuck do you want?" in an angry, commanding tone. What came out was a whimper. What the fuck? Regardless of whether or not humans can smell fear, they can certainly hear it. I heard it in my own voice, and that only made me more afraid. But he didn't react to it at all. He just stood there, smiling. And then, after what felt like forever, he turned around, very slowly, and started dance walking away, just like that. Not wanting to turn my back to him again, I just watched him go until he was far enough away to almost be out of sight. And then I realized something. He wasn't moving away anymore, nor he was dancing. I watched in horror as the distant shape of him grew larger and larger. He was coming back my way, and this time he was running. I ran too. I ran until I was off the side of the road and back into a better lit road with sparse traffic. Looking behind me, then, he was nowhere to be found. The rest of the way home, I kept glancing over my shoulder, always expecting to see his stupid smile, but he was never there. I lived in that city for 6 months after that night, and I never went out for another walk. There was something about his face that always haunted me. He didn't look drunk. He didn't look high. He looked completely and utterly insane. And that's a very, very scary thing to see.